Hi, Stéphane Bourg speaking, Institut Nova Floresta. I would like to emphasize or make a wrap-up of the main, let's say, value addition of systemic approach toward permaculture. How to see the benefit of systemic approach when it comes to permaculture. First of all, I would like to say that permaculture is not so much about architecture of the landscape. Of course it is. We will modify the landscape to improve the flows, the distribution of resources. But it's more like a natural urbanism, meaning that you don't have to, like in architecture, build from small elements. It's more like to integrate functions, vegetation, habitat, features, I don't know, greenhouse, house, forest, etc., etc. So it's more like urbanism in the sense that the elements already exist and they are subsystems. And urbanism will manage more the flows between, the integration between these subsystems to ease the flow and to improve the global let's say dynamic, the way the ecosystem is breathing, the way it's everything is circulating. So it's more like in the philosophy, it's more an urbanism, but it's not city urbanism, it's a natural ecosystem urbanism. Another important aspect of this modelization with systemic approach is the fact that we have one of the main objects of descriptions are systems, flows, and with the systems, the envelope, the boundary of the system. And if you start to consider it, to consider the ecosystem as a set of subsystems, you can consider that subsystems are niche, ecological niche, meaning that when you will build your farm, your ecosystem, you will really try to create these interfaces to not to close a subsystem, but to manage an interface. And when you will cross a specific ecosystem, sub-ecosystems, you will create diversity, because one ecosystem will be different of another one. If you have something totally flat and just putting elements like in a chaotic way, even if organized in, let's say, in permaculture philosophy, you could miss the fact that you have to kind of make boundaries on this sub-ecosystem. And making boundaries, you will have various different ecosystems, meaning different temperatures, different humidity, different sunlight, different vegetation, etc. Meaning that you will have diversity of subsystems, meaning that you will increase the global biodiversity of your ecosystem because you will have different niche. And this as well can help for the climate change, because if you have different niche with different climates, subclimate, microclimate, then you can adapt, because maybe you will grow some plants, or you have some animals which are more adapted to warm weather, etc. So if the climate change a lot, and we saw in the past few years that, for example, here it changed a lot. We have droughts for 1.5 years, which was really exceptional, etc. So you are able to create a system which nurture species which are more adapted to the change of the climate. So you can use that as a kind of propagation error that you can duplicate if you see that the normal, the standard will be this new ecosystem which is more warm, etc., etc. So it will help as well for the transition to the climate change. The fact that we have boundaries as well, we have a term in biology which is ecotone, and which is the description of interface, this zone of transition from one ecosystem to another ecosystem. So when you have this picture of subsystems, you can imagine that you emphasize the necessity to create these boundaries. And when you create these boundaries, then you will increase the number of transition places and ecotones, so you'll improve biodiversity and fertility of the system. And maybe the most important value addition, or is one of the main, is the notion of simulation. In a systemic approach, simulation is really a fantastic tool. With simulation, you can manage complexity, because it's not like in a simple world where you have one or two elements, so that you do it and you know it will work. It's more like it's complex, so you don't really control all the elements or the factors which will influence your system. So simulation is extremely important. That's why you do usually a little step. You do a little step, you observe, etc., etc. But to go beyond that, why not making a simulation system? When people are doing, after their PDC, for example, design of their farm, that's a bit unrealistic, because okay, you can have the big trends of your farm, the big design, but when it comes to going to detail, most of the time doesn't really work as you planned it would work. So, but because you will forget something, because your system is complex, and you see there was fertility you did not expect. Here it was very difficult to grow certain plants, etc. So you cannot guess that, and the complexity of the ecosystem make it impossible to have everything in your mind. It's not possible. So that's why simulation is so much important. And to answer to that, so here at Novel Floresta we developed a platform, a simulation platform, to be able to travel in time. When you do a simulation, what you do, you are not in the reality, you are in virtual world. You design year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 4 you will say, to do that, I should have done in year 1, I should have done that. For example, I should have made a windbreak here to protect the plant I want to plant 3 years later, etc., because I want to focus on that, on that, on that. So it's really time travel, and it's really this simulation feature is really one of the validation of ecosystem, systemic approach. So to explain a bit, to give a first vision of what is systemic approach, because it's not a complex concept, it's not a complex technique, technology, method. The idea of systemic approach is to simplify. So if you make a very complex method approach to simplify, you miss the point. So systemic approach is not very complex, and I did a playlist of YouTube video to explain the concept, what it is about, and to give some hints about the relationship between systemic approach and permaculture. So that's a playlist that you can find on YouTube on Nova Floresta account. And a short comment, don't talk about systematic approach. It's not to be systematic, it's a systemic, meaning it's coming from system. Systemic approach is based on the description and methodology to manage ecosystems. It's not systematic, it's systemic, okay? Because I see that a lot on the website, people who talk about permaculture and systematic approach, which is totally not that, okay? So if you want to see the serial videos.